Hello, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome to Recovering Out Loud. Today, we're honored to have, for the second time, JP. Jay is the director at the Recovery Place Toronto, Sober Houses for Men, and a dedicated therapist with Jack's Toronto. Jay brings unparalleled compassion and 40 years of expertise to the world of addiction recovery. In this episode, we dive deep into the realities of addiction, exploring its impact, the cycle of dependency, and the transformative power of recovery. Jay shares more personal stories, insights on maintaining composure in the face of challenges, and the importance of community and purpose in sobriety. We also discuss the state of addiction treatment in Canada, including advancements like rapid access addiction medicine clinics and harm reduction strategies. Get ready for an honest, inspiring conversation with a true role model and friend. If you or someone you love is suffering with mental health or addiction, please reach out. Go to jackstoronto.org, JACS or therecoveryplace.ca for more help. Enjoy the show.
I was giving Jane $100 in the grocery store. I said, and there was an older woman behind us. And I looked at Jane, looked at the woman, and said, "That was great last night." She didn't get it for about 5 seconds. And she, "You're so bad."
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
Right now.
The proper etiquette when you answer a phone and you're on speaker is immediately
I'm
to
on
say,
speaker, yeah.
"Hey, I'm on speaker. My wife's sitting here."
Yeah. Or nowadays when you're in the car, that's the worst one.
I always tell people, and I said he was doing that to me, and I said, "Don't do that." Like,
Yeah,
you
he was
know?
pissed.
Yeah, I was pissed. Yeah,
When
'Cause you never
used-
know what somebody will say, right?
Yeah, I used to have guys
I
that
just
would,
shot a guy last night. What's happening? What's up with you?
you're like, yeah, I'm in the courtroom right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Fuck.
I'm on a charge.
The
but,
judge
you know,
is listening.
It's all good.
Jay, thanks so much for coming back down, man. We really appreciate you. We wanted to get this back up with Caleb, and we got kicked out early last time. I had a million more questions for you, and I got a lot of feedback, too, saying that that was one of the better episodes.
Yeah.
So
Oh, great.
we appreciate you coming down.
I don't know if they were saying that because I wasn't in it or because you're so handsome, but they really liked that episode.
Probably a little both, right?
Oh, man.
I was overshadowing Anthony.
Yeah. No, it was good. We had a good time. I really enjoyed it. And I'm enjoying this podcast, like we said last time. But, I had a million stories before. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. In the bathroom at this place that we do the thing, I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a sign on the wall, and it's so sarcastic and condescending. I love it. It's like, thank you for not peeing all over the toilet seat and keeping it clean. And every time I read that, I always think about him because we were in rehab one time, and he was telling this story about how he sat on the toilet seat, remember? And someone pissed all over the toilet seat, and you jumped right into the shower after, and it like ruined your week. Dude, that was like the funniest. I'll never forget that. It seems to happen to you a lot.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, literally, like, it takes 5 seconds to just grab a bit of toilet paper, wipe it off. And I'm lazy with those things, but, like, thank you to my mom for raising me right, I guess. But, like, do not piss on the toilet seat, even if you're in Walmart. Like, clean it up.
Someone's got to go
nothing.
in there after.
Yeah, nothing worse than sitting on a wet toilet seat.
Yeah.
You know why it's wet.
You know why it's
like,
wet.
You know,
No one's
100%.
crying on
yeah,
it.
No, nobody splashed water
Well,
on it
especially when
to
the
wash
sink's
it.
like all the way on the other side. Oh, that's awesome.
That's why you never leave your shampoo in at the Y in the shower. You never know what's going to be in there.
Oh,
Right.
I didn't think about that.
Thank you.
Or don't use someone else's shampoo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's sick.
Actually, quick story before we get into it. I at a place I worked where you have cross shifts, right? So you'll come in for 10 hours,
Yeah.
and then at nighttime, the same guy, you're doing this for 14 days straight, right? And there was a fight between the two guys, and it was something simple over taking someone's shampoo, right? Because we all shared lockers. Anyways, we come in. This was the opposite crew. One of the guys on my crew put piss in his shampoo bottle, right? And he told me he did it, but I didn't believe him. Like, there's no way you took the thing and pissed in it. Sure shit. The next day, The guy was waiting. He was waiting in the parking lot for us, and he said, "Who the fuck pissed in that shampoo bottle? Because it went all over my hair."
Oh my god.
So
Yeah, you would know right away.
Yeah,
The
you would know-
consistency is very different.
Yeah.
Unless you have like an illness or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that once in a while in the recovery house. Somebody's got their, they go in to do a urine screen, and we look in, and they've got a bottle of shampoo, and they're pouring it into the urine bottle.
I'm clean.
What's going on there?
What about the first time you had to do a piss test at Jay's house?
Oh yeah.
Tell that story.
So I went 3 months of rehab, and you do a urine screen like once a week or whatever. But they witness you do the urine
Yeah.
screen. They watch you, right? Take your pants off.
For
and
that
pee.
reason, exactly.
Right, yeah.
Right? Because as addicts, we're pretty sneaky people.
You
so,
think?
Yeah. So it's like my second day out of rehab. I'm at Jay's place, and I go to do my urine screen, and the counselor gives me the cup. We're in the room, and I just pull my pants down.
Right in front of him.
I think I remember somebody
Ready to
telling
go.
me, you or somebody else
Yeah.
telling me that
And
in
James
the
was like,
the
"Oh."
office,
Oh, it was
in the
it was
counselor's
Steven.
office,
Yeah.
right?
Steven's like, "Whoa, whoa!" He's like,
Did it in the office.
he's like, "Pull your pants up," and I'm like, "Well, you trust me?" I said, "Nobody trusts me." Like,
Yeah,
okay.
it's true. Nobody trusts me to
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah, so yeah.
That's awesome.
Very glad you didn't have to do a number 2 in the.
Yeah, we're taking fecal samples now. It's a new drug screening.
Yeah,
You can't bullshit it.
rectal exams.
Bend
Yeah.
over. Oh man. All right, Jay. Tell us. I was curious to get your thought on this. What, in your opinion, what is addiction?
Well, different definitions of it. The DSM defines it one way. Medical model defines it another way. But I think basically a physical dependency on a substance, emotional dependency on a substance or a behavior that when you stop doing it, there's symptomatic withdrawal effects. Something around that.
That's a really good. That's a really good short description of it.
I was looking at the cycle of addiction today, and that circle.
Yeah.
And I think what I've come to realize, what separates me from my friend, the guy that's not an addict, is that stage. I think it's 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, where it's I think it's dependence or, like you said, tolerance to addiction. There's like that when it starts to affect someone's life, they can't show up for work, their health starts to decline. They go, whoa, I better stop this.
Yeah.
And we don't, like, I don't know what that's about, right? Like, I have no idea. When I get into that stage, it's like, how do I keep going? How do I, how do I do this so that I can not affect my health so badly, or somewhat show up, or it'll be different this time, which was what we talked about.
I think there's a, when you look at that cycle of dependency or, cycle of use, really, the social, experimental social use, misuse or overuse, abuse and dependency. And the difference that I always see between people who are abusing drugs and alcohol and people who are dependent on drugs and alcohol, you say to somebody who's abusing drugs and alcohol, something like, if you keep using, you're going to have these consequences, And the person who's abusing can say things like, oh, wow, I don't want that to happen. I'm going to cut back or I'm going to stop. A dependent person says, oh, wow, I better get really stoned tomorrow. That's going to hurt.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it.
There's a failed solution, they call it.
Failed solution.
When you were saying the first description, what it makes me think, I'll use an easy example, is my brother. My brother, he drinks, like not alcoholically drinks, but like, on his weekends, whatever, he'll go out and party, and he'll get drunk, and he'll wake up the next morning, and then he'll be normal, right? For me, if I do that, I lose my house, I lose my truck, my family doesn't want to talk to me, right? And it's like, to a certain degree, it like pisses me off. It's like, I wish I could do that and be so-called normal, which I
Responsible.
hate that word normal, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for me, and even with recreational drug use, which sounds very absurd, but there is people that go out there on weekends occasionally and they do a bit of cocaine. And, they're not supposed to do it, but they do it. They don't mess their relationships up. They don't lose their homes. For me, I could not do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what separates me from the normal person.
They always say it's like, fun with problems, and then just straight problems after that, right? And I experienced that.
It's like they say at the beginning, it was fun at the beginning, right? But like, I was in addiction for about 5 years, and it was about manageable for about 3 months.
Mm.
And then the other 4 years and whatever months, that's lots of math for me to do. But the other rest of the time, I was like already starting to fall behind on bills. And then I'd sell one thing, and then I would sell another thing, and then at the end of it, I had 2 T-shirts, a pair of socks, and
Yeah.
a headache. That's about all I had,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it sucks, but that's
At
just
one of the agencies I work at, Hamish, the guy who
Love that guy.
started the agency, would say pleasure, passion, and purpose. You know, in the beginning, it's pleasurable. We develop this love relationship with it, and then it becomes our purpose. You know, we're just finding ways and means to get more.
It's all we think
know,
about.
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
I just shared this at the house meeting. Like they asked me to tell my story. And I remember the one part of my story I told was, and I've said this all my podcasts as well, is when I told my parents about like how bad my addiction was, and they asked me, Caleb, why do you do drugs? This is like a week or so before I went into rehab, not even a few days, and I said like, listen, like I would before they asked me that question for years now. It's like I just do drugs to party sometimes. Like I don't do drugs every day. Like I'd lie to them. But what I told them that day was, listen, I wake up every single day and I feel so fucked up if I don't do drugs. This conversation that me and you were having right now, we're having it because I just got high 20 minutes ago and I'm able to feel normal right now to
Face
talk to
life.
you.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I said, I feel not normal with drugs, like medically, emotionally, like every way. I feel horrible without them. And I remember my parents usually always had something to say after I had said something because it was usually stupid, but that was like the first time I just like was honest and just described how I felt. And they were brokenhearted, right? But they were just like blown away by like, holy crap, like we can't help you.
Yeah.
We're gonna try something else.
Yeah. You need
Professional help.
Yeah.
Okay, what in your opinion is recovery then? Like what is recovery?
I think, well, first of all, I think it's stopping, stopping the use. So you're
important.
stopping the level of harm
Mhm.
that's being caused, you're putting yourself at lower risk for ongoing health concerns. There's kind of stages to recover, stages to it. So, usually there's a mounting crisis of some kind. Someone's overdosed, as Caleb is saying, losing, friendships, suspensions at work, families, distancing themselves, or friends are distancing themselves, you're starting to borrow money, whatever's going on. There's some kind of event or crisis that kind of catapults the person into that next stage of, okay, what do I do? There's a model called stages of change, which is pre-contemplation. Other people see the problem, you don't. Contemplation, I know I have a problem, I don't want to do anything about it. Planning, I know I have a problem, I want to do something about it, and I'm looking at what the options are: outpatient intensive programs, inpatient, psychotherapists, therapists, 12-step programs, then action. And that's usually where we see people actually making some fundamental changes in their life. They've stopped using, they put themselves at low risk, they're starting to eat better, sleep better. Maybe they're on a medication that will help them, like an opiate reduction medication or an antagonist. They might have gone to a treatment center. Could be a number of different interventions. And then there's maintenance, which is I'm maintaining where I'm at, which puts me at low risk for ongoing health concerns, right? Yeah. And then during that stages, there's also relapses and things like that. Lapses, slips. Yeah.
What would you say is when guys come into your house and when you're counseling, what's kind of the common theme that you see in successful people, like people that put together a lot of time or a long amount of time sober?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
What's like the common thread?
I think a couple of things come to mind. One thing is that they develop meaning and purpose in their life. They wake up, they're not sitting around the house all day in their pajamas. They've got somewhere to go, something to do. That kind of gives their life a certain quality, right, that they didn't have before. The other thing is joining, being a member of a community. And I think that's why 12-step programs are so successful, because it gives people, or Smart Recovery, or any of those groups that have that commonality of we all have these problems, how do we get through it together? So meaning and purpose and belonging, a sense of belonging. And it doesn't really have to be, necessarily addiction focused. It could be a church group. It
Yeah.
could be, I don't know, going to the gym.
Yeah, yoga's like
Yeah, it
group.
could
Yeah.
be anything as long as, I am a big advocate of joining groups that do look at the healing process around addiction. So aftercare programs, outpatient programs, because you have like-minded individuals,
Mhm.
right? Whereas you're going to church, the focus is on something else. It's great, it's spiritual, and I think that spirituality plays a big part. We get out of that self-centeredness. We start thinking about other people
Yeah.
more, and how we can kind of help each other. Yeah.
It reminds me of the
Yeah.
analogy of it's like we're all survivors of the Titanic.
Yeah.
We've all kind of
Right.
been
Yeah.
through this like
That's a good. Yeah.
massive event together, and when you go into like recovery meetings or places where other people are recovering and have had addiction or alcohol issues, you kind of just everyone's like, hey.
Yeah.
You get that nod. It's
Yeah.
like, I know what it's like. You see the new guy come in or the new girl come in, and you're just like, they're shaking and they're scared and they're hopeless. And you're just like, I know,
Yeah.
I know what it's like.
But like to the whole successful thing, it's something I've seen too now, living in sober homes and seeing people go out, seeing people.
You've seen both sides.
I know have success.
Yeah.
I think if you're someone that wakes up and, like you said, stays in your room, doesn't do a whole lot, doesn't have much purpose throughout your day, and purpose doesn't mean you're going out there to change the world. Purpose just means like maybe you're looking for a job.
Yep.
You have some
100%.
obligations.
Some passion.
Now,
yeah.
basically, if you're sitting in your room all day or sitting at home all day watching TV, the only difference between that and what you were like in addiction is you're not high. Because I remember for my worst parts of my addiction, like I just sat in my house,
Isolation.
isolated myself, and got high.
Yeah.
So, like, I think one of the most dangerous things for addicts is boredom.
Yeah.
When you get too much time in your head, and you're in yourself, that is when bad things start to happen, right? And
sorry, go ahead.
no, I think I mention a lot of the same things when I'm on this podcast, but it's because
They work.
They work.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. Like the second I'm in my room, just like right now for the last week, I've had a little bit of free time. I'm in between jobs, and like if I'm thinking if something's going on in my life and I'm in my head thinking about what I should do about it, I call someone.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do that, like I'm still such an idiot in so many ways, and I'm very open and honest to say that. Because and if I don't think I'm an idiot, and that's from people telling me like, no, you got some work to do. If I think and I do what I think I should do, like 30 minutes ago, what just happened, I explained to you, we won't get it on here. But if I would have done what I thought I should do, I would probably be
hospitalized
in the police station,
or in a police station, right? Like, and that's just what my instinct tells me to do, right? But I had a friend with me, and I was never someone who did what someone like. I never took advice.
Yeah.
I never. If you told me to go left, I was not going left. I was going right, and I was never coming back.
Right.
But now, just not doing my own will all the time.
I like to think of it as like it's like I'm presenting to an audience of me's. It's like a bunch of me. And I'm like, and then everyone's just like, great idea, do it, right? Like that's what happens when I'm in my room by myself.
Yeah.
I noticed that to be especially true when I was in treatment this last time with you. Every single time I was in my room watching TV, I was miserable. The place sucked. Time was never gonna come. Like the time was never passing.
Miserable with a capital M, by the way.
Yeah, he would attest to it. And then every time, without fail, every time I would just go into the room, the big room we called it at the treatment center, with all the other addicts and people, counselors. It's like I was just like in another world.
Connected.
I was connected.
Yeah.
I was happy. I was, I wasn't so bad. The treatment center. I was recovering. Right.
I think there's a couple of sayings that come to mind. An addict alone is an addict in bad company. Because as addicts, we're walking up a down escalator. If we just stop, our old thinking kicks in. Oh, I should go get high. I should go do this. I should go do that. Because we're pleasure seekers. Our pleasure center is going, I want to be happier. I need something out here it's going to be food. It's going to be a relationship, not even a relationship. It's going to be sex. Something will make me happy. And the other one is get out of your head. There's no adult supervision in there, right? Which is true. We have such immature attitudes and thoughts about our life. That we need intervention, and that's why aftercare and 12-step programs and friends in recovery are beautiful because they can tell us, hey, what's up with you, Caleb? You're not quite right You know, like
You're
you look
off.
like you're off in
Yeah,
space somewhere.
yeah,
You know, and we need that.
yeah.
You
I
know?
have a question for you, Jay. So, like, for someone, you've been in this program for a long time,
Mhm.
you've been around addicts for a long time, and like, I've been around a lot of people now, like in the recovery industry, we'll call
Mm.
it, and like, you're by far one of the most compassionate people,
Aw.
and I mean that because, like, I truly mean that because you've been doing it for such a long time now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I could say for myself, for the first 2 months, I was a lot nicer. I'm getting less nicer like every single day. But
Are you getting jaded?
right? So it's like compelling to see someone like yourself who's been doing it for so long and you
Mm.
still continue to do that, right? Like
Absolutely.
I see it all the time with you.
Mm.
And I'm not just trying to like
Thank you.
blow your spot up.
Yeah.
You're a great guy when it comes to recovery. But my question is like, do you ever get in like you run sober homes.
Mhm.
So you're dealing constantly with
Drama.
just
Mm.
and like not normal drama, like drug addict drama. Like
Mm.
we do some pretty messed up things at times.
Mm.
Do you ever get to like do you ever like lose your patience with these people?
Oh yeah, all
And
the time.
and how do
with that guy, see, you can't see him; he's off camera.
Jake, shout
But
out
our-
Jake.
Shout out to Jake.
He may have
Yeah.
saved your life today.
yeah, but like just
Yeah.
what do you do like because I think that's a coping mechanism that like I could like things happen in my life and I freak out, I get mad, but for you, like how do you just stay so calm because you are such a calm, cool, collected guy. Like I've seen some situations that I've dealt with firsthand now with guys relapsing, things happening, and I call Jay and I'm expecting Jay to go like, holy shit, call the ambulance, call the cops, get on an
Get the
airplane,
news over
fly
here.
fly to a different country. That's what I'm expecting you to say, but you're just so like you're so good about everything and you're not judgmental.
Serenity. Yeah.
You know, I'll be thinking this guy's an idiot. You're like, oh, it's okay. He just needs to do this, and this, and it'll all be okay. Like, how do you just keep that kind of composure all the time?
You know what? I don't really know. I think some parts. I think sometimes desensitized to it, like it's just all normal.
Yeah.
I guess it's like somebody who works in a morgue and sees dead bodies all the time. And
Yeah.
like if I saw one, I'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, but that person's like every day. You have to think, the recovery houses are very different than treatment centers.
Way different.
Treatment centers, you're getting people that are, like their moods are up and down like yo-yos.
Yeah.
They're in withdrawal, they're self-loathing, they're shame, guilt, fears, anxiety, worries. With us, everybody's come in, they've got 30 days. Maybe they don't have 30. Maybe, they've just come in off the street, but it's somebody that that we've worked with, like our good friend over here. But you basically know what the person's about. And you know that they've got a good heart.
Yeah.
You know that they're kind. You've seen that. I've seen that. I've talked to them on the phone before they come in. They've told me what their aspirations are, where they'd like to go, what their goals are. And I guess, when things don't go well, when somebody, I don't know, somebody hears of a friend's death or, their world gets rocked in some way. I try to think, what, they're just doing the best they can right now. And I'm going to treat them with as much love, kindness, and respect as I would want to be treated myself if I was offside, And I think that's basically the best way, the best thing we could do with people. Because, I think ultimately we all feel like we all want to be cared about.
Yeah.
And when somebody's really offside, they're not feeling like they can care for themselves. So we have to show them that they're worth being cared for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love them until they can love themselves.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
told.
the whole message I heard when I was going to recover, the recovery programs.
People did that for me, and they continue to do that. For
And
Give me a hug. Yeah.
I remember when I had a couple months of sobriety and I was in treatment still, and like someone come into the like they were doing their detox, right? And they were like just annoying me. I was just like, this person's an idiot or this or that. So that night I had a counseling session and I told my counselor, I'm like, I'm about to lose my mind on this individual. And he laughed and he said, listen, man, he's like, do you not remember the big gigantic bag of shit you walked into this treatment center with? He's like take a break, like take a chill pill. And I thought just that simple message hit me. I was like, that's very true. And that's one of my biggest problems is like, I forget.
Yeah.
Right. And when you think like, okay, like that could easily be me. And I remember you said those words to me, I think it was when I called you about one of our friends had a slip and you just said like, hey man, you said that could be me, that could be you, right? And when you really look at it like that, it's like, okay, right? Because my first reaction is to just judge the situation, judge the person. It's this, and this, but who really knows, right?
Yeah.
We're all the same at the end of the day when it comes to our disease of addiction. And Is it, it's sad to see. That's the biggest thing for me. I get sad when I see someone.
Yeah.
That's one of the toughest parts about a sober home for me is you build such good connections with these guys. You know what I mean? Such good bonds and connections. You're living with them. And then, you're on this great path. Everything is going great. And then within, 6 hours,
That's what powerless, when they talk about being powerless in
Yeah,
recovery,
literally.
when you've invested so much time and effort in somebody and they've invested in you, and just in the blink of an eye, they're gone. And the
Gone.
relationship is gone.
They're a different
And you don't
person.
know if you'll ever see them again.
Yeah, that's so
But
sad.
it's not like a friendship where 20 years goes by and it's like you pick
Nothing's
up right
changed.
where you
Yeah,
left
yeah.
off.
Yeah.
You don't know what that person's going to be like 2 days from now. They're
Yeah.
calling you for money.
Yeah.
They're saying everything's great except,
That's
can you give me $50?
That's
right?
so true. One
You
of my
know?
friends that's out right now. We lived together for a month. We become really close, hung out every night, right?
Yep.
And then he had left. I hadn't talked to him for about a week, and then we talked on the phone, and it was so different.
Yeah.
Like like we had such like a good bond and mesh when we talked and hung out in person, but that conversation on the phone was like awkward. It was weird. I'm like, I don't know, no
Who
idea.
is this guy? Yeah.
Who is
Dr.
this
Jekyll
guy?
and Mr.
That's what I was
Hyde.
going to
Yeah.
say. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Something I really wanted to get into last time, and I'm happy you came back for this purpose alone. So I've been to 3 treatment centers now, 3 rehabs.
Just interviewing staff about their families. Yeah, good.
Yeah, just
Good.
checking out
Yeah.
to give you feedback.
Yeah.
My slow brain just got that joke. Now.
Yeah, I know. It took me a while too. I was like, this guy's too smart for me. Just to give you info on how good the treatment center is, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like one of those undercover food
Yeah,
guys. Nobody knows I'm not actually an
Right,
addict.
right.
Yeah, just
You're
checking the
critiquing.
facilities. Yeah,
Yeah.
just checking the facilities.
Quick joke before you get into this question. I heard this actually a couple weeks ago, and at a different sober house. I was at a meeting, right, and someone I guess got caught doing drugs in the bathroom.
Right.
So
How unusual is that?
Yeah.
Never happened before.
So the owner of the house, he says, "Listen," he's like, if anyone's going to do a science project in the bathroom, he said that's a no. He said research gets done outside. He said
That should be a sign on the wall.
yeah. He said no science projects in the bathroom. All the research is outside.
For those who don't know,
Yeah.
we call it doing more research when we
Yeah.
go back out, right?
Yeah.
It'll be different this time. This insanity.
There's a treatment center in Israel. They've got a sign outside. It says diamond polishers.
Oh,
Right?
Yeah.
And what the guy's saying is, you come in here as a rough stone and we polish you up and you
I love
become, yeah.
So I've been to 3 rehabs, 2 in the United States and 1 here in Canada. I wanted to get your opinion on kind of the state of our society, Canadian society specifically, the structure, the infrastructure that we have as a country, maybe as a province of Ontario or city, or what do you think about the way things are run now? And I found out later that the reason I was sent to the US, the real reason I was sent to the US is because it was harder for me to escape and go back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe
Where am I?
Yeah.
Right?
Right? And it's just, it was,
And where's my passport?
yeah. And why aren't these people saying A? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But then I've, it's funny because that actually happened when I went to Canada, the Canadian one. I actually left and I went back.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me now.
To make you feel better. My parents, when they brought me to rehab, they picked me up. I slept in a vehicle. I fell asleep and I woke up 13 hours away from my house. And my parents like, "You're not going home, buddy.
Yeah.
You're staying right here."
Took a couple bus rides and Ubers to get back home. You don't even have Uber where
Yeah.
you're from, so
Yeah.
you're screwed.
Yeah. I had somebody, they woke up in Georgia in the mountains
Oh, boy.
and they turned to their father, I think it was, and said, "Where am I?" And the father said, "I'm not telling you."
That's the worst hangover ever, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
So what do you think about the way things are right now as a
That's actually a good
society?
question.
Yeah. I think we've come a long way in the last, 10, 15 years, especially around, the whole model of addiction treatment and mental health, really the greater, kind of model of mental health has moved from kind of an institutional model to, I think it would be called like a multidisciplinary model, which means, we're not institutionalizing as many people. We're doing more keeping people in their communities, having smaller inpatient and outpatient programs. At one time, let's say in the 50s, mental health was treated, you were shipped off, to, some, asylum,
Yeah.
right? You were taken off the street and, you were dealt with in whatever way they were dealing with it. I think they called back then dipsomania was alcoholism.
Wow.
Back in those
Dipsomania.
days.
That sounds way
Dipsomania.
worse.
Yeah. But today, we've moved away from that model. They've closed up a lot of the asylums that were around. Lakeshore Psychiatric Institute, Whitby, Midland, Huronia Calling, or Aurelia had a big, mental health facility up there. So they've closed most of those, and the local hospitals have opened up with smaller psychiatric units. And I think what's gone on in around the 60s, we started coming out with more psychotropic medications like Valium for anxiety and antipsychotic medication, stelazine and chlorpromazine, things like that. Although not great. Listen, we've come a long way. It's been, 60, 70 years since then, or 50, 60 years. The medications have gotten better. So people go into these units in the hospitals, they get stabilized after 2 weeks, they're on medication, they're functioning better, their quality of life is improved, and they're going back out into the community, and they're becoming, their quality of life is better, right? So I think that's the model we've moved to with addiction as well, where there's a lot of harm reduction strategies that have come out, needle exchange programs, things like that, naltrexone, naloxone. Everybody can get access to naloxone
That was a big
kits
one.
now.
Yeah, that was huge.
Before it was, present your ID, and it was, they removed a lot of the barriers for, you getting help for your friend. Everybody's got, that's out with opiates now, has naloxone kits, and they're antagonists. They bring them out immediately out of an overdose, right? Like within seconds.
Our treatment center gave everyone a free one on the way out.
Yeah.
I still have it in my car.
Yeah. Naltrexone, a longer acting naloxone, for people that are drinking alcohol, or it reduces the cravings around it. Or if somebody's on naltrexone, they might be on, I think it's called, I can't remember, Rivia or something. But it's a shot, a depot shot, a 1 month shot, right? And so
that's called Sublocade.
Sublocade, yeah. So if they're taking that, then they're good for, almost a month.
Yeah.
Right. If they use something, they'll be in precipitated withdrawal or some, it's not fun.
No, it's not.
Right? Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny quick story. I was trying to pick up drugs one day, right? And I had used the day before. So the way these drugs work, Suboxone anyways,
Right.
if you can't be on any other drugs but
Right.
Suboxone, or else you'll get like aggressively sick.
Yeah.
So
Other opiates, yeah.
other
Yeah,
opiates,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I had used it within the last 24 hours, and I went to someone who I knew who had Suboxone, and I always heard about it. I'm like, that kind of sounds like a fun drug. Never tried it before.
Right.
Should be a great time. So I
Right.
went to him, bagged this guy for his medication, like a sick person I was, and he gave me some.
Yeah.
He gave me some. I went home, I took it, and then within 30 minutes, I'm sitting on my couch waiting to get high, right?
Yeah.
And then I just felt like the biggest urge to puke ever. And I spent the
Yeah.
next like 8 hours. Like, it was like not
Yeah.
quick. It was long, like 8 hours puking and puking and puking. And then I thought this guy would thought he lied to me or something. But then he told me, bro, you didn't tell me you were doing other drugs. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? And it's an anti-antagonist. So
Yes.
it's meant to keep you off everything else,
Yeah.
right? I believe those actually may help someone if,
Yeah. So they came out with Subutex 15 years ago or something. In the States, we did some testing here with it, and I think what they found was it could be abused. So they married naltrexone with it. So we got Suboxone, right? So it's the Subutex is an opiate replacement that binds to the neurotransmitter walls, right? And then it lets go. So it's not like methadone where it fills it up and then just stays there
Right.
until it's metabolized. It bounces around, right? So you don't get as
an intense high.
yeah. And they married it with naltrexone so that you can't use other, or supposedly you can't use other things. I think probably some people.
I found a way.
Yeah, there's always.
Yeah,
Not to get,
you know,
not
We're
to
pretty
get, like,
resourceful.
Yeah.
not to get too political about
Yeah.
it, but I can share my experience. When I used methadone, I was still able to use other drugs.
Yeah,
And
sure.
methadone still got me very high. Right. So
Yeah. But, everything's got a place.
yeah, you're right.
Methadone has a place, naltrexone, naloxone,
For the-
Sublocade.
I know a few
know?
people back home that are, they've been on this stuff for 30, 40
Yeah.
years. And not to make anyone's situation harder
Yeah.
or easier, but like
Yep.
for me, I had 4 or 5 years using opiates. It would be easier for someone who's been using it for 40 years and their
Mhm.
body is like deathly sick if they don't have it,
Mhm.
right? Now that person who is let's say they're 65 years old, they got 5 years left to work until they're done retiring. Is it worth them not being able to wake up in the morning, go to work, this drink? If that's
Right.
all they're taking, if they're taking that they're dosed, because last time on one of the episodes I kind of talked pretty harsh on methadone, and it was just because it threw a pretty good curveball in my life, right? But that's my personal problem. I'm a drug addict, and I'm the one who let it ruin my life. But
Yeah.
for that person who actually might need it,
Mhm.
and it's helping them get through their day, they're just using their dose, that's prescribed to them by a professional doctor. Okay, I could see how that helps someone. But
Good
for someone
quality
like
of life,
myself who was
you
using
know?
it with I was using it to get high,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking multiple of them in a day.
And there, I've got lots of friends who've been on it 30, 40 years, and it just gave them a quality of life. They could escape from that buying and ripping and running and
Yeah.
that street
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah.
and we know so many people,
That's-
our friend, you can't see him, but he's over there, just came off of methadone, and we celebrate,
Yeah.
because he's not in liquid handcuffs.
And I don't think people
Liquid
really.
handcuffs.
But it gave, but it gave him a quality of life that he couldn't get without it,
Yeah.
and through that, been able to go to school, been able to work, have healthier relationships with his family and friends, been able to sit in maybe a 12-step meeting or other kinds of meetings and help other people. So, like you said, it has its place, but it can also be abused, right?
And for
Yeah.
someone who can get off that, or any drug, to be honest, but like we're gonna use methadone specifically, like that's a huge milestone in
Yeah.
someone's, like, that's big. I've been through it personally, and it's so hard to do because it's almost like you can rationalize it in your head, like, oh, it's a prescribed drug by the doctor. I
I
can
did
take this,
that a lot.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
same, like I don't understand how people who smoke pot and are alcoholics, like it's so easy for you to just, you go to a gas station and it's right there, right? So like,
Yeah, but you can say that about, look at all the money in the bank, like I saw them, they brought out stacks
Why wouldn't I take
of 50s
this?
and 100s.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, can I have some of that? Well, no.
Sometimes when you have
a
a
good way to look at
conversation
it,
with a
yeah.
therapist, they just make you feel.
You know what they do is they bring a mirror around in all your sessions and they just hold the mirror up, and
That's
what I
recovery,
do.
though. Don't we always say, we pray you see yourself walk through the door?
Yeah.
You see that sick and suffering addict that you were once.
Yeah.
And now you're like a couple of steps ahead of them. And you either look down on them and say, "Oh my God, what a terrible situation that guy's in," or you look at them and say, "Oh my God, I remember when somebody else helped me."
Yeah.
It's like empathy
Somebody reached
versus-
down and gave me a hand.
Yeah.
And that's what really true recovery is about, is helping the next guy.
It's like
play it forward.
It's like having empathy versus sympathy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good point.
I've been in
Yeah.
their shoes. I've been in your
Yeah.
shoes versus, wow, you're pretty bad off, man. Like, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends and drive my Ferrari while you, walk to the bus, right?
Jay, I got a question for you. And we talked about this before. So like since we're talking about like the state of like the recovery in our country and stuff.
Right.
So for me, it's still really new because I'm new to Toronto, but like the addiction and mental health scene in Toronto is quite large. Now, for the person that's like currently homeless on the side of the street using drugs, what is like the best, how do you help that kind of person? Because like that person, and the way I'm asking this question is because I was like granted a beautiful opportunity to go to a treatment center. I had everything like land on my lap. That person's not going to have that opportunity land on their lap, right? 9 times out of 10 anyways. And so for the person that doesn't have that, what does Canada or Ontario or the city, what needs to be done to
what's
help
the
those?
answer? Yeah.
What's the answer? And that's a very loaded question. So
Well, I think it's a good question. I think, the government's poured in a lot of money into street outreach work. We've not enough, as far as homelessness goes, but you have to kind of think, okay, what's the priority with this person? They're living on the streets. They're using drugs and alcohol in a way that probably helps them forget that they're living on the streets.
Yep.
Or maybe they've been to the shelter system and they were abused and there was some violence or something else happened. They would rather live
That
on the
happens
street.
a lot. Yeah.
But we do have, I think the government's pumped in about $30 million. I can't remember, 32 million I think it was 2023, 2024, and they pumped in another 20 million into beds, more bed spaces in treatment centers and sober houses. Um, and that's to get more people off the street, give them more opportunity to move forward. But I think when we're talking about, people that are homelessness, marginalized populations, youth, indigenous populations, single mothers, things like that, we're doing better than we were.
Yeah.
There's more programming. There's a program that started during the pandemic, Better Help, I think it was called. And it's for kids, I think 16 to 25, free counseling, virtual counseling. We never had something like that before. There's so many more, RAM clinics, rapid
those are
access
great.
addiction.
I've been to those personally. They're
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I think back like 15 years ago when I heard they had the first pilot studies, I think there were 6 or 7 of them in the country. I think Ontario, has 60 now in the hospital system.
They're
That's
everywhere.
amazing.
Yeah.
So removing those blocks and barriers to getting help was a big deal, a really big deal, where you had to, call, a place, put your name on a list, do an intake, go down to another intake or, whatever, make an appointment, see the doctor, all that kind of stuff. Now, walk into a hospital, you're seeing, like I said, the multidisciplinary team. You're going to see an addiction physician, you're going to see a social worker, you're going to see a nurse practitioner, you're going to see a nurse, you're going to see an addiction counselor, and you can go back as many times as you want, basically.
All free. Yeah.
And what their job is to get you into the right type of help according to your level of motivation and what you're using and what will be, we'll say the biggest bang for the buck kind of thing. Can you take time off? Are you working? Can you take time off work? Are you afraid that you're going to lose your housing? All kinds of problems, for people. It's a multifaceted issue. And having these teams so readily available, I think, has been miraculous. I think the States has been looking at our model, introducing our model as well.
I want to comment on the RAM clinics because I thought that was a flawless experience. So RAM is, it stands for Rapid Addiction.
Rapid Access Addiction
Medicine or
medicine.
Rapid Addiction,
something
Access
like
Addiction Medicine. Anyways, they have virtual as well as in person. So I live in downtown Toronto. I pulled it up on my phone one day because my other therapist, Polly, shout out Polly, mentioned it to me. And there was one at St. Mike's Hospital.
Right.
So I walked there. And I'm not even kidding. It was like the middle of the day. They have certain times you go in. I've never had an experience in a hospital like this before. It was probably an hour total in and out. They had, like you said, I saw 3 levels of care. I saw an intake coordinator and they're all qualified credentials. I saw a doctor after that. And they asked me a bunch of questions. I did a P test. I lied about the P test, and I said that I wasn't doing any drugs, and then I was on Vyvanse. So before I went to do the P test, by the way, I'm probably gonna pop for amphetamines, and I felt good about being honest in that moment. But then, to your point, they gave me a bunch of resources, pamphlets, all this stuff of free therapy, free groups. They prescribed me medication. I think one of them was the naltrexone for the cravings. And it was in and out an hour. I was in and out. So I shout out RAM clinics. If you need help, I always link in the show notes after all the resources in Canada. When people say to me like, oh, there's nothing I can do, I don't have money, right? There are answers out there, and you've beautifully articulated that. There's answers. There is a solution out there. You just have to want to do it.
There's, I'll go through, scrolling, looking at YouTube or whatever it is, and ads will pop up for treatment centers. And then I look at the comments. Comments will be, well, I can't afford these expensive luxury rehab centers. And I always write in, you know what, call Connex. Connex.
Yeah, Connex is great.
Right? And here's the phone number.
Yeah.
And it's a listing of all the mental health facilities, the beds in the province. It's a listing for gambling programs. It's a listing for all the addiction treatment centers. And you get hooked up pretty quickly. Yeah. There is, obviously, we're in a social medicine, in Canada, so there are waits. But that day's, if today's February 5th and, my intake date for going into treatment is May 4th. May 4th is going to come around whether I'm listed to go into treatment or not.
Yeah.
Maybe by May 4th, I've gone to 50 meetings already. and done 10 other things. Maybe I haven't. And if I haven't, thank God there's a bed for me on May 4th.
That's a great way to look
I,
at
I
it.
really liked how you recite like what you just said, because when I said that I was expecting like almost a negative, like oh, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed, but because it's so easy to go out down the street, see a couple of people that are struggling homeless, and it's like, oh man, they should be doing more, but they are really doing a lot. I didn't know about this RAM clinic.
Yeah, it was great.
That's great. That's really great. And
Yeah.
I mean, it wish if we could go like this and help everybody.
Yeah.
You could, but it's
Well, what they say treatment or recovery is for people that need it, not for people that want it. No, it's for people that want it.
Yeah, I was gonna
if
say.
it was for people that needed it, we'd have treatment centers the size of the Sky Dome.
And no one would have
That's right.
the Rogers Center. You're dating yourself there.
The Rogers.
Oh, I love it. I just want to comment quickly on the wait times too, because I had that experience too. Another reason actually why I went to the States, it was private as well. But so 10 years ago when my mom first started, I remember like it was yesterday. She, poor woman, like she had no answers, right? And everywhere she called, every single person would say the same thing. He has to want to come in.
Right.
Like, we can't accept somebody that, and she would lie on the phone and be like, no, he wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to. And I definitely didn't. Right.
Yeah.
And she was at her wit's end, but
were you telling your mom like, no, I'm not going?
yeah, no, there's no way. And then when I got kicked out, that was the only way I went.
She was
And it
like,
was-
like you. I
she
don't
cut me
really have a
off.
problem. I use once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, it's not that bad,
Yep.
right? So I remember 10 years ago, the wait times to get into like a CAMH or a public place were something like 4 months, 6 months,
3-4 months. Yeah.
And she was like, he's gonna be dead by then if he keeps
Yeah.
going the way he's going, right?
Yeah.
So now I will say this: when my wife called this last time to try and get me in, the wait time had reduced. They were still weeks out, but it is getting better, to your point.
Yeah.
And progress, not perfection, right? We're never going to be at a place of perfect. I think one thing that we could do better, and I don't know if this is ever possible. I'm a very, I like pie in the sky ideas sometimes, but what I noticed when I went to the States is a lot of the kids there had been there on their parents' insurance.
Right.
Insurance covers a lot of rehab
Yes.
in the States. Hazelden, the one I went to,
Yes.
which is a great treatment center.
Yeah.
Do you ever think we'll get to a point like that in Canada?
Well, insurance covers, I'm trying to remember, insurance will cover part.
Right.
So they'll either cover the therapy part or the resident part. And I can't remember which one they cover. I know with Homewood, a lot of insurance will cover, let's say it's $400 a day. They'll cover $200 a day of it. Some insurance does cover, inpatient rehab.
Oh, okay.
But you're right. The majority don't. They'll cover therapists, and things like that.
Yeah. And then it's an allotted amount.
Yeah.
Some companies,
Yeah.
like if you're working for like a company that
Union.
like a union,
Yes.
right, or like some of the companies that I work for in the mines, I know of guys that were able to get time off work and they got to get sent to rehab, right?
Which is amazing.
Right, which is it's an amazing asset and perk to have on your job. But I mean, like you just said 5 minutes ago, you gotta want it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that need it that don't want it, right? And I wonder what the number would be on people who called to get into one of these rooms that never showed up. Probably a very high number, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
The next day,
But-
it's not so bad.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, well, that's the nature of addiction.
Right.
It's like in the moment I have a crisis.
Yeah.
And I want help right now, this second. And you talk to somebody 2 days later. Oh, the crisis is averted.
Yeah.
I
found
got the
$100.
money. I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, I got the money. Or whatever's happened, right? And they've been able to kind of like wiggle their way through that loophole. And but if it, I always say addiction will raise its ugly head. If you've got a drug problem, alcohol problem, and you're entering that crisis kind of, mode of your life, and let's say you've been able to put the dragon to bed for a little while, it'll raise its head again.
Yeah.
Right. Unless we do something. And there's lots to do. There's lots of room to go.
Yeah.
Like I work for a place called Jack's Toronto, and we'll give Jack's a shout out.
Shout out, Jax.
And one of the things that we started right from the day one was remove the blocks and barriers to getting help. If you want help, call. We'll do an intake with you within 24 hours, and you'll have a therapist calling you back or emailing you back for your first appointment within 48 hours. Because you're right, Caleb, when you say people, they want help now,
Yeah.
right? Not in, a month from now and 6 months from now. on the other hand, sure, get yourself on a wait list, but in the meantime, let's try everything we can to get you some kind of help to
Yeah.
reduce the level of harm you're causing in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know right now, like when I got to go to rehab,
Mm.
like my father and my brother come to my house, whatever, they asked me to go, and I said, okay, fine, I'll go, but like give me like a day or two to get ready,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I would have.
Oh,
Yeah,
you would
give me-
not have
give-
gone.
Give me 3 weeks.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I need.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
And
I
my
got
dad,
stuff to do.
and he said, I'm giving you 20 minutes
Right.
to pack your bag.
Yeah.
It's
And
the
he was
best
back,
thing he ever did.
and he was
Yeah.
back in like
Yeah.
13 minutes,
Yeah.
right? But for those 13
Yeah.
minutes, I didn't pack a single thing. I sat
Yeah.
there and I made love to my pipe.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's what I did.
Yep.
But
Yep.
so like it's so sad.
Reminds
Because,
me of guys taking ketamine.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
walk in their
yeah.
bedroom to go pack, forget why they walked into their bedroom, come back out and go, I think I need a coffee. Say, where's your suitcase? Right? Oh yeah. Oh,
Who are
oh
you?
yeah. And they go in their bedroom. You sit there on their bed with them, and you're looking at them, and they're walking around from closet to dresser to closet, wondering why am I in my bedroom again?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
For us, I know
Very
people
funny.
that watch. I've even spoken to my mother about this. Like, oh my god, like some of the jokes, like, but like if you've lived this life
Yeah.
and you've seen it, especially Jay. Jay's been doing this
Yeah.
for
You become desensitized.
yeah.
like you
Yeah.
Jay's
said.
been doing this since the
And it
dino.
becomes funny.
Yeah.
You have
Jay's-
to
you
laugh
have
at some
to,
of the
yeah,
stupid
absolutely.
things that
yeah,
we do.
exactly.
you know?
Half the time I'm laughing, I've
You
done
get
worse.
it. You get
Yeah.
it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some
we all have the same excuses, right?
Yeah.
to make it serious for one
Yeah.
more second.
Yeah.
When it comes to the aspect of waiting times and
Mhm.
stuff, I think like if you told an addict like, okay, you got 3 weeks, it wouldn't be
Mm.
such a big deal to tell the addict that. But
Mm.
for the mother or the
Oh, yeah.
loved one that's
That's a
calling
lifetime.
Well, they're in
And
crisis,
in, they're
so it's,
so scared.
it's like, how do we mitigate that crisis? How
Yeah.
do we calm, people down a little bit? And I think, we give them a plan,
Yeah.
a plan of action that they could follow. Okay. A lot of people, when I do the initial assessment, I'll say, okay, well, this is the wait time to get into a government facility, but why don't we do this? Why don't we get you on the wait list? We'll do the tools or whatever the intake process is. And in the meantime, let's try and do everything we can. You say that you're serious about it. Let's get you into some groups. Let's get you connected into some outpatient treatment in the meantime. And maybe that 3 months will come and go and you'll be doing amazing.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you're not doing amazing, at least you have that bed,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Jay, this is usually Anthony's part in the
Mm.
episode. He usually says this to every guest, but I'm gonna steal the spotlight. And I'm gonna ask you this question: if there is to one person that, how do you word? He words this so perfectly every time. But if there's to the person that's out there right now still suffering with addiction,
Mm.
hopeless, what would you say to that person?
What a great question. Well, I'll tell you something. There's a rabbi named Abraham Tursky. He passed away, but we asked him that question, right? And we said in one of the workshops that he came up to Toronto and did, if you've got 60 days clean and you want to drink Lake Ontario, your alcohol craving is so
Yeah.
vast, right?
Yeah.
And he said something like, if using today is going to make tomorrow a better day, then go ahead, because you can get through the battle of a day, And I don't know anybody who uses today that tomorrow is going to be a better day.
Yeah.
They're going to feel worse. They'll feel more ashamed. They'll neglect their responsibilities. There's a lot of different ways to answer that question, but I think, that was one way that kind of made sense to me. The other one is never give up hope.
Yeah.
No matter how many rehab centers you've gone to, no matter how many people you've burned in your life, no matter how ashamed you feel of the things we've done, just don't give up hope. And they say hope stands for helping other people everywhere,
Wow.
right? Or every day, right? And I think people like all of us, we help others. We try to make our world a better place for somebody else, so that there's nothing better than seeing somebody else do well,
Mhm.
and know that you had a little bit of a hand in
Yeah.
it. What a blessing.
Mhm.
Eh?
That's so true. To genuinely feel happy for someone. I was always envious and jealous when I seen someone doing good, but now when I see someone doing good, like, makes me happy.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I remember when you weren't doing so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And then also too, you're happy that they're in your life. You're like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
this guy's in my life, and I want to do better too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
the quality of the relationships
Yeah.
improves so much.
Yeah.
And that's where that spiritual component comes in.
Thanks so much, Jay. We
Yeah.
appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, great.
was
I'm
awesome.
so happy to come down
Yeah,
tonight.
you're
Yeah.
you're a gem.
It's
Yeah.
cool to
Thanks,
have like
buddy.
you're such like a. I know you don't like when people put you on
Do
the
it.
pedestal.
Do it.
But like you're such like you're a role model to recovering addicts, and you're
Oh,
a very
thanks,
well
buddy.
known person. But like you come anytime I see you lost, we're pretty close.
Yeah.
But anytime I see you,
Yeah.
it's just like just talking to my buddy.
Your buddy
You
Jay.
never have a high ego. You never try and talk down to me. He's just like such a like you know that saying like you want what that person has. Well, I want what you have.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
Thank you.
yes.
What a nice accolade.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Put that up on the fridge.
Yeah, yeah. I want what you have,
Yeah.
your girlfriend, your car, your house. Right?
The Mazda. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming down, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. Please help us grow the channel and like, share, and subscribe for more content. The discussions and stories shared on this podcast are for informational and motivational purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, addiction treatment, or therapy. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please consult a licensed physician, addiction specialist, or mental health professional. You are no longer alone.